Serious, people who went missing. What happened? I walked out of my life when I came home to find another man in my bed with my girlfriend. Spent a year hitchhiking. No missing persons report. No one looked for me. No one missed me. Dang man, really sorry to hear that. I was about 6 years old. One day I was playing outside. There's a petting zoo about 4 kilometers away from where we lived and I guess I decided to go there. So I did. By myself, barefooted, in my pajamas. When I got there the manager found out I was alone and had reached my parents by phone. I don't actually remember much of it but it's pretty hilarious. This reinforces my belief that children are basically just tiny drunk people. So, back when I was in Boy Scouts, my troop lost me, twice, in the same night, while I was still in my tent. This is not an exaggeration. The story is thus: we were at Camp Decorah, in Iowa. We had the idea to go and perform a raid on the counselors' tents cabins. I, however, was feeling ill, so I specifically said I'm not feeling well, I'm going to sleep. They acknowledged this, expressed regret that I was not coming along, and went to have their fun. They have their fun. They retreat into the woodline. Then they take a head count. I am not in the head count. They expect me to be in the head count, because they forgot. So, now, there is a missing camper. The entire camp is set to searching for me. Sometime during this, a guy from my troop decides to, get this, check the tents. I am in my tent, as I should be. So he goes to report that I am found. I go to the bathroom during this time. Someone comes back to the camp and checks my tent. I am in the bathroom, so I am not in my tent. I am now missing again. I get found sooner this time. When I was 4 I got lost in a city and was rescued by what my dad thought was a gang. We had dinner in Chinatown with another family. 5 kids in all. Crossing the street after dinner, we were holding hands in a big chain. My older sibling let go. When the light changed and everyone crossed I stayed on the sidewalk. I was looking through a window into a barber shop where some huge guy was having his head shaved. Can still picture the scene. When I finally looked around everyone was gone. I started to cry. A group of teenagers approached and asked if I was lost. I said yes. A tall kid hoisted me into his shoulders and started down the block. Other kids split up and went in different directions. We rounded a corner and I saw my dad. He turned white and ran toward us. The kid lowered me to the ground. A few other kids were there. They stood around awkwardly while the tall kid explained what happened to my dad. My dad, not a demonstrative guy, flung himself at the kid and hugged him. My mom appeared and picked me up. Years later my dad told me he saw the same group of kids hanging around when he first parked in the city that evening and was suspicious that they were a gang. He was embarrassed and tried to be less judgmental after that. Wish I could thank those guys. This was a long time ago. That was actually really smart to put you on his shoulders. My high school, American, football team had an away game in a somewhat sketchy city. Bus took the team back to high school afterwards. I was too young to drive and I was grounded and had my phone taken away. I waited at the school for an hour and a half but my parents never came to pick me up. So I started the 4-mile walk back to my house carrying all my pads and school books. While I was walking back my mom showed up and I wasn't there. She panicked and found the coach and told him. My coach sent a group text to the entire team asking if anyone knew where I was. Came to school the next day and everyone thought I had missed the bus and gotten lost. It ended up being a team joke for the rest of the year. Bonus: my parents never took my phone away again. I went sleepwalking one night when I was 10 years old, unlocked the front door and went for a stroll through the neighborhood. I woke up a few hours later in the middle of the street, barefooted, in a cul-de-sac I've never been in before. Scared the bejesus out of me. Ended up running through the streets until I found my way back home. My parents had been shitting bricks looking all over for me. They put a lock on my door after that so I couldn't go for any more midnight strolls. My cousin once disappeared while sleepwalking. Her parents woke up in the night and she wasn't in bed. They searched the streets for her but nothing, so they eventually called the police. The police asked them if they had checked inside the house. They hadn't. She had fallen asleep in the hall closet. I was hiking to see the volcanic eruption back in 2010, the one before all the grounded flights. On the way back I got separated from my group. We were about 8-10, one of which was a very good friend of mine. Anyway, I tend to walk pretty fast, especially on my way down from a mountain. This was in March in Iceland, so it gets dark pretty soon and fast. Unfortunately for me, I didn't have a torch on me, and in maybe half an hour everything went pitch black. I had chosen to walk the same path as the one I went up. This was extremely stupid of me, as that path was about 5 meters away from a 15-meter drop into a canyon. Not only that, but the path was beside a waterfall. Waterfalls tend to have a lot of mist coming from them. Said mist goes onto the path, and because this is March in Iceland, and on a mountain it's about -5 degrees Celsius without wind chill, that mist turns to basically an ice skating rink on a 45-degree angle. That was an experience. I had been lost for about 5 hours. I didn't turn up until I got down from the mountain. But I was one of 20 that got lost that Saturday, 2 of whom died. Icelandic SAR groups were quite busy that time. Once when my grandfather was watching my younger sister and I decided to take a shower and didn't think to tell anyone. I took my leisurely shower, and when I came out no one was in the house. I went outside to see if maybe they were out there. It was summer, so reasonable to spend the evening in the yard. It turned out, my grandfather and sister had alerted the neighbors that I had gone missing, and the entire neighborhood was out looking for me. It wasn't even that long of a shower. It's annoying how much of an overreaction people can have. When I was a young lad, my brother and I used to go to this gymnastics play area. They had trampolines, those bars you swing around, and a tightrope over a pit full of pieces of foam. My brother and I decided to play hide and seek. I hid first. About an hour later, the place is closing. My mum asks my brother where I am. He says we're playing hide and seek and I've hidden really well. 3 hours later, the staff have locked all of the doors and phoned the police. My mum was in a blind panic. My brother had given up on finding me and was bouncing on a trampoline. The staff were frantically tearing the place apart looking for me. My brother got bored of trampolining, so decided to play in the foam pit. He jumped in and heard a loud ouch. I climbed out of the foam and said, "Did I win?" We never went back to that place. Dang, you are dedicated to the art of hide and seek. I was at a college house party. I went there with several friends. I didn't have a cell phone yet. Managed to hold out until 2004. Our dorm rooms came with landlines at the time. I ended up going home with a guy and hooking up with him. Woke up the next day, checked my email on his computer and found a ton of frantic emails from my friends. They actually thought that I'd been abducted, roofied or killed myself. I was very depressed at the time. They filed a missing person report on me with campus security and several friends were searching for me in the woods. I drank too much, left my buddy's house to get my phone out of his car, woke up several hours later with about 5 cops standing on me yelling at me to quit resisting. Turns out I had wandered through 2 gates, a front porch and into his neighbor's basement. When the cops showed up, I was snuggling with his neighbor's 2 Rottweilers on their basement floor. Reminds me of Lethal Weapon 3. Now, they said I was lucky they didn't eat me. I was also lucky I didn't get shot. This took place in a small town near East St. Louis. Pretty rough neighborhood. I was arrested for felony breaking and entering. Luckily, the cops ended up being cool and understanding. My buddy's elderly neighbors were just freaked out by a drunk, naked white guy sleeping with their dogs in their basement. My buddies had no idea where I was until the next afternoon when I called him from jail. Luckily, he was a good dude and bailed me out. All the charges were dropped. When I walked up to the attorney and judge at court, they all pretty much made fun of me and just asked if I learned my lesson. Was 2-3 years old, at the beach with dad and bro, on a camping trip. Just started walking around picking up bird feathers. My dad and bro and the rest of the people we were camping with went back to camp. I just kept picking up feathers. After a while my dad realized he forgot me and went back to the beach in a panic and found me with a large amount of feathers in my hands. I didn't so much go missing, as much as got forgotten. I was living with my new husband in a town about 1,000 miles away from my mother, who has always been a world-class warrior. This was in the days before everyone had a cell phone. His entire family was going to be invading us in a few days, so I was polishing up the apartment to look good, and in the process of wiping fingerprints off the phone, I turned the ringer off and did not notice. We just moved in, so several days without any calls wasn't unusual. Fast forward, the in-laws have just arrived while I am lying down in the bedroom taking a nap because I have been spit shining everything in the place and making tasty baked goods all while coming down with a bad cold. There's a knock on the front door. My husband comes to the bedroom and says there's someone who wants to talk to me. It's the police, and they insist on talking to me alone in the hallway to make sure everything is really, truly okay. Then they tell me to call my mother. I come back in to see his parents, sister, brother-in-law, their 7 kids, and a passel of assorted aunts, uncles, and cousins, all staring silently at me. But wait, there's more. Mum didn't have our address. All she had was a description of the building. The town was small enough that the police knew just where that was, but they didn't know what apartment, so they knocked on every other door in the building before getting to us on the top floor corner unit. I got blackout drunk on the 4th of July and presumably tried to walk home from my friend's house. First thing I remember is being in a really sketchy part of town about 8 miles away from my home with my phone dead and still crap faced. Went around knock on people's doors at 3 in the morning trying to use a phone. I eventually stumbled to a grocery store at like 5 in the morning and asked for directions. When I walked outside, these 2 real gangster looking guys who were picking up more booze at the store asked if I wanted a ride. Being a very trusting person and drunk as crap, I accepted. They lit up a blunt and we smoked it as they gave me a ride home. I stumbled into my house at 6 to be screamed at by my girlfriend who thought I was dead because the last text she got from me was, "Help, I lost." I was about 10 or so and I was a member of a club where I learned to shoot air rifles. My parents would drop me off, then go and take off again, and pick me up when it was time. One day they didn't show up. I waited for an hour, called home, no answer. This was before cell phones, so I was stuck. No idea what to do. Well, I did have one idea. I knew how to get home. It would be about 6 kilometers walking, but I had a good mental map of the way back and the weather was fine. So I left the club and began to walk home. I made it about halfway before my parents pulled over next to me and they were kinda angry with him. Also kinda apologetic because they'd forgotten about me. They told me not to wander off like that again. And I told them not to forget about me again. Didn't get any punishment. Almost exactly the same thing happened to me, except I played table tennis, and I made it 5 / 6 kilometers before my dad picked me up in his car. Be right back. Googling statute of limitations. We're good. When I was 16 I stole $5,000 and ran away to New Orleans. Before Katrina when it was still fun. I'm old. Good times were had. My parents are divorced and I only saw him a couple times a year. My grandparents on his side, that I saw even less, and my sister went to this huge water park. Apparently there was a water ski show they all wanted to watch. I asked if I had time to stand under the big bucket that splashes everybody. They all walk to the big bucket thing, and 7-year-old me spends 5 minutes staring at the bucket waiting for it to tip over. When it finally happens, it is awesome. Then, I look around, and my entire family was gone. They only had 2 kids to keep up with. I, being a rather intelligent child, walked to the front of the park and got them to keep calling them on the intercom. They didn't come until an hour and a half later, after the show had ended. They told me after the fact that they indeed heard the announcements and thought I could find my way back. I didn't consider myself close to this side of the family as it was, but this was the first event that made me start distancing myself from them. My best friend and I decided to play near the river. I was 6 or 7. The thing is it was 5 PM and when crap got dark we didn't know where to go, so we stayed near the river for the whole night. Telling scary stories while sitting near a river with no light is not the best thing to do. Here's Bob Ross holding a baby raccoon to brighten your day. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe and comment. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.